What's up, you guys? Today we're learning about carburetors. Everything you need to know about them, how to tune them, what each component does, how it installs. I'm going to teach you everything. Can be a very confusing subject, carburetor tuning, but it doesn't need to be. If you understand how one of these spray bottles work, then you can understand a carburetor. All we're doing is getting that mist perfect inside the carburetor. Let me show you exactly what I mean. I spent a ton of time and effort getting these little diagrams made for you guys to teach you how to tune your carburetor. So if you could, do a spinning backflip onto the subscribe button and hit the little blue bell that's right on the side so you can get notified when new videos like this come out. Let's get started. We're going to be tuning this GY6 Honda Ruckus that has a PWK slide style carburetor. It doesn't matter if you have a motorcycle, ATV, car, it doesn't matter. If you have a carburetor, these concepts will apply. There's a few terms that you should know when we're dealing with carburetors, just because if you're talking to somebody or somebody's talking to you about carburetors, then you guys will be on the same page. So lean would be not enough fuel. Characteristics of a lean condition on a carburetor would be a bog. You go to give it full throttle, it's like, whoa, that's too lean, not enough fuel. Stoic, that would be perfect. The carburetor's running absolutely perfect, no hiccups. And then rich. Rich means too much fuel. So when you go to give it gas, it's going to be like, it's going to be coughing, sputtering, things like that. The opposite of the bog, lean, not enough fuel. So lean, not enough fuel. Stoic, perfect. Rich, too much fuel. So I've got the carburetor completely disassembled. By the way, this is a PWK slide style carburetor that we're working with. All of the pieces have been broken down and labeled so that I can tell you what they're called, what the functions of each piece is, and then we can put it back together and you'll know exactly where all the parts go, what they do, and then we could dive into what components we need to switch out to make the carburetor run absolutely perfect. So this is our carburetor body. It's a completely stripped down version of the carburetor. We've removed all the components. I'm going to go step by step and I'll show you exactly how all these components go onto this carburetor. So this is a pilot screw or air fuel screw. I'll show you what I mean in just a second. So you got the screw. It's kind of like a tapered looking screw, and then you got a spring that goes on there. The spring is on there so that it doesn't vibrate, basically. You can call this a pilot screw or an air fuel screw. If it's an air screw, that little part where you install this pilot screw or air screw is going to be on the air filter side. If this screw is more over on this side, it's going to be a fuel screw. The easiest thing to do is call it a pilot screw. The more you back it out, if it's an air screw, it's going to be, you're going to have to give it more air. If it's a fuel screw, the more you back it out, you're giving it more fuel. So we'll just install that. A good reference point would be to tighten this down until it's lightly seated. So I just got it lightly seated, and then you're going to go half a turn, 1.5, 2 turns for sea level, 2.5 turns for high altitude. That's just a general setting that you can set right out of the box. That's not concrete at all. I'll show you how to adjust that in a little bit. Next, we've got the idle screw. This is pretty self-explanatory. This controls the idle. So you got your little washer that slides right on there. And then you've got your spring. Again, the spring is so it doesn't vibrate out. This just installs on the side like this. And you really can't get this set. You're going to have to apply some pressure since it's got the spring. You can't get this set until, make sure you don't strip it. It's a real easy finger screw. You can't set this until you actually get the engine started. So I just kind of get a few turns in there, and that's the idle screw. Next we've got the choke. Pretty simple. Choke goes in and out like this, the plunger, and it is made for cold starts. So if your engine won't start up when it's cold, you pull the choke. A lot of times on this style of carburetor, you won't even need these. Let me show you how it goes in. Right up on the top of the carburetor, you'll see the little spot for it. It's pretty obvious because it's got the threads. You just match them up, and you just crank it down. This is a 14 millimeter. Just get it nice and snug. It's plastic, so be careful. We've got the needle jet here and the emulsion tube. Sometimes these two are together. If they're together, this complete assembly is going to be called the needle jet. But since it's a two-piece deal, this is our needle jet and this is our emulsion tube. This is the part that always ends up on the floor. People don't realize it's a two-piece deal, and let me show you why. So the way that this goes in, see that rounded part? That's going to be facing like down towards the bowl, just like this. So if I drop it down in there, like that, and I get my emulsion tube out, you don't realize it's two pieces, and then it just falls right out. That's the reason why you just have to be careful. So again, the machine end is going to go down to the point whenever I look through the carburetor. If I look down the carburetor, then it sticks through. If I did it the other way, it won't pop through. So make sure you got it the right way. Very important. So the emulsion tube or jet holder, I'll show you why it's called a jet holder in just a second, goes back right where we dropped the emulsion tube in. It locks that sucker in place. So I'm just going to crank that down. Look like that. And I need to crank it down with a wrench, so let's go ahead and do that. This is a 9mm. Just barely tighten it. It's not like a serious tighten because this is brass. It'll strip really easy. Next up, we've got the main jet. This main jet goes right onto the jet holder, of course. Just like this. That screws in as well. And this one is the 6mm. I just tightened it down barely. Okay. And this is where our fuel is going to go through. Now, a lot of people get confused on what a jet is. I mean, you think a jet, you're thinking like an airplane or something weird. A jet basically is a screw, just like this one, with a hole drilled through, a very precise hole. So that's our main jet. This is going to control 3/4 throttle to fully wide open. Next, we got the pilot jet. This controls the idle, and it just installs in this circuit. Again, your carburetor might be slightly different, but the concepts remain the same. So again, a jet is just a basically screw with a hole drilled through it, very precise. The pilot jet is going to look a little different than the main jet, as you can see. And then you just snug these down. They're just brass, so you don't need to really crank the heck out of them. Just to dive into these jets, since this is the most talked about part in any type of carburetor tuning is jetting. This is the pilot jet. The pilot jet you can call an idle jet, you can call an idle circuit, pilot circuit. There's a few different terms, but the bottom line is this skinny pilot jet that controls the idle to like quarter throttle. And then you've got your main jet here, and that's going to control the 3/4 throttle to full wide open. So there, and I'll teach you about the rest here in just a second, but on the sides of the jet you will find a small microscopic number, and that refers to that size of jet. So if you need to go up or down, if you're lean or rich, then you can do that by, say you had a 120 jet and it's too lean and you needed to go to richen it up a little bit, then you go to like a 122 jet, just for a reference. So this is kind of a unit that needs to be assembled within itself. We're not going to be doing a cable, so it's be a little bit different. But this is our needle jet. The needle jet is going to control a quarter throttle to 3/4 throttle. So this is like your main cruising circuit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the slide. This is called the slide. I'm going to drop the needle, the jet needle, in just like that. And then you've got your cable lock or spring seat. That'll go down just like that. Then you've got your spring. If I push it down, you'll see what I mean. See, that kind of locks in. You can do it backwards like this, but then it doesn't go down all the way. So make sure it's the correct way. It'll slide down really easy. And then you've got your cable top here. So cable top, or cable cap, whatever you want to call it. And then normally you'd have your throttle cable coming up through the top, and it'll lock in there. Let me show you how this goes into the carburetor. It's like blocks when you're a kid. You got to line it up so that At the same time, that needle needs to go down into the needle jet hole. You'll know what I mean if you do it yourself. But I'm going to drop it down. It obviously didn't get caught up because it dropped all the way down. Since it's spring loaded, I've got to push the cap down. I'm just going to hold it down with my fingers like this. And then you can get your screws started. Again, normally your cable would be coming in from the top here. So I'm just going to get it started by hand and then just crank it down so it doesn't come loose. So by now we've almost got our carburetor completely put back together. But there's a few more components that we need to put into the bottom here. So we'll go from the bottom up actually. So this is the float bowl drain. And this is your float bowl. This kind of works just like a toilet, if you know how a toilet works. So this would be the tank behind your toilet where the water is being held. So I'm just gonna, the cool thing about these carburetors is if I pull the float bowl drain off, I can get to the main jet, which is cool since I don't need to take the whole float off. Just tighten this down, just nice and snug. Again, this is the drain for the fuel. So normally that's one piece. I just had it apart because I wanted to show you what the two pieces, how they went together. This is your float. Imagine the back of your tank on your toilet, how that works, if you know how that works. That's going to be the same concept. Then you've got your float pin, which is this guy, and then your float needle, which is this. Let me show you how it goes on the carburetor. Here's your float needle. If you notice there's a little button right there. If you had a clogged carburetor, that button wouldn't be pushed. But what I need to do is drop that onto the float like this. See how that works? And then I'm just going to drop this down. See how I have this angled so it doesn't slide off the float? Okay. I'm just going to drop that down like that and line those holes up there because that's where the pin's going to go. I'm going to slide my pin through there. Just like that. And this is how the float operates. If I go like this, up and down, that float needle is going up and down. And see, this carburetor is right side up, so when gas comes in where there's a cap over this, but when the gas comes in, I'm flip it around like this and take the float bowl off. Gas comes down through this hose right here, in through this valve right here where the float needle is. As it fills this float bowl up, gas will start to make this float up. When it floats up, it's going to kill the fuel. So see where that's at? This line right here with the line on the carburetor, this is the proper adjustment that you need. The final step is to install the float bowl on the carburetor. So you just line it up. Sometimes it's a little bit tight and difficult. It goes on like that, and then of course 2 screws hold it on. Then you've got your hose for your power jet. There's a small jet inside here, and when you open this all the way open, completely open, if you notice it draws fuel from the float bowl up into what they call the power jet, and see that little hole there? That little hole supplies fuel at wide open throttle. It won't start coming out of there until it's wide open. And that's a complete carburetor we just assembled. You can use this for cleaning your carburetor as well, now that you know how it goes together. For reference, this is how the carburetor is mounted. You've got your air filter attached, and it goes into your intake manifold, which mounts to the actual engine. And then you've got, of course, your throttle cable coming in through the top. I know what you're thinking. There's a lot of components in a carburetor, but at least now you know what each component does, where they go, what it looks like. Now I can show you how to tune a carburetor. Let's do it. Now that you guys know what a pilot jet is, a pilot screw, and a jet needle, and a main jet, let me tell you what they do. So you got your pilot jet. That's going to be 100% your idle, completely closed throttle to quarter throttle open. Cool thing is, you got your pilot screw or air fuel mixture screw. You can adjust that in or out to get that idle perfect. Once you've got that idle perfect, you can adjust the actual idle screw down to make it idle correct. Your jet needle, that's going to be your main adjustment point. You're going to have a quarter throttle to 3/4 throttle. That's going to be like your cruising circuit, your jet needle. Then you got your main jet. That's going to be wide open, 3/4 throttle to wide open. All of these circuits overlap each other. So it's super, super important that you only do one adjustment at a time. I always start my carburetor tuning with the pilot jet. I get that so you know it idles. You may have to do some pilot screw adjustments so that you can get that idle perfect. Then I do my wide open. It might stumble and spit on the way up, but if you can get it to wide open, then you know your main jet is somewhat close. And then I start working on my needle jet, the cruise speed. If you can get all of those dialed in perfectly, you'll have a perfectly running carburetor. So to get to your jets, if you're just doing your main jet, you can remove that float bowl drain, and you can get right to the main jet without removing the whole float bowl. Thing you have to be careful with is on these float bowls, if you get gas on this O-ring, it could swell up and it's hard to get back on. So your main jet here, this is going to be for the wide open 3/4 throttle to wide open. So you got your main jet here, this guy, that's going to be 3/4 throttle to wide open. Then you got your pilot jet that sits right next to it. It's kind of sunken in down there. That's going to be your closed, all the way closed to 1/4 throttle. Remember, you can adjust your air-fuel mixture on your idle circuit. You can adjust that in or out. If you get to the point where you're halfway down, like you just have a half a turn till it bottoms out, then you're going to need to change your jet. If you back it out more than 3.5 turns, then you're going to have to change your jet. That's kind of the range, half a turn to 3.5 turns. Now your needle, you'll need to pull that out. I showed you how to do that. That sits inside the slide. And if you notice, your needle has little bitty slots. I have a drawing here. These little slots, you have to decide where you want to put your clip. Depending on the slot, if you go up or down on the needle, it's going to make it leaner or richer. So if I go up higher on the clip, the needle is going to go down, which makes it leaner. If I make the clip go down towards the bottom here, then the needle is going to raise up, which is going to make it richer. You can buy different needles with different angles of this needle. Very subtle difference on the with the naked eye, but that makes a difference too. So you can play with those needles. I won't get too far into that. That's more for super fine tuning. One huge thing that you need to know is jetting is always different. It doesn't matter if you have two identical bikes. Jetting is generally always going to be different. You're going to get it really close based on like your buddy that has the same bike has the same jetting, but yours is going to be slightly different. I don't care if it's a little air screw adjustment, a total main jet change, it's always going to be different. So you can get a reference from online, but that's not going to be the concrete answer. Elevation and performance intakes like air filters, performance exhaust, they all play a giant role in jetting. So if you get a brand new exhaust system, or if you get a new intake, or if you went up from California to Colorado where the altitude's higher, where they have less air, all of this plays a huge role. So you constantly need to be jetting and things like that. That's why electronic fuel injection is such a big deal nowadays. The technology has caught up. A carburetor is basically a tape deck compared to an MP3. They still work great, but you've only got 4 circuits to tune. Unlike an EFI system, they got about 30 circuits to tune. You can really dial them in, and it's all electronic. Like I told you, I have this ruckus here. We're going to tune it. I'm going to put everything I taught you into action, and you can see exactly the sounds it makes, what happens, and how I do the adjustments. Let's do it. One very important thing you need to check before you begin, you need to have throttle free play. Turn your bars to the left and the right to verify that your throttle isn't being pulled in any way. You should have a couple millimeters play when you turn your bars to the left and the right, so you know the cable is not pulling the carburetor slide up. So we've got our brand new carburetor in here. This hasn't been started yet, so I'm assuming that we're going to need to do some idle adjustment for sure, and adjust our air fuel screw. This does have a choke on it. I'm going to try not to use it. A lot of times on this style of a setup, you don't need to use the choke. It starts right up. So let me see if I can start it. I might have to keep it alive with the throttle, the hand throttle, at first, and then I'll adjust the idle. Actually, it's decent. So if I turn this, that's going to raise the idle, like that. Now, this is our air fuel adjustment screw. I'm going to turn that in or out. It's getting worse, so I'm going to go the other way until I achieve a nice smooth idle. There, it's going up, if you notice. There's like a sweet spot here, so kind of you find that middle range, and then the idle's normally too high like it is right now, so I'm going to turn this down. And again, I didn't use the choke at all, so that's cool. Maybe a little higher on the idle. On this particular model, the GY6, you want it at 1800 RPM to 2000. So I'm just going to let it sit here and warm up completely for probably 5 minutes before I do anything else. So it's nice and warmed up now. If I give it a whole handful of throttle, it bogs like that. That would be, generally speaking, a lean condition. That right there is a bog. That's normally a lean condition. If it was a rich condition, you get like a stumble, like it wants to rev, but it's not. But it is kind of a guessing game. That noise you were hearing is a rich condition, where it's stumbling like that. So we just want to start from the very bottom and work our way up on the tune. So we're going to go for a little ride. We can see if we get that main jet dialed in first. We've got the idle jet set by ear, really good. So we're at idle, smooth, things like that. But what's it going to be like when we go wide open? And then we'll adjust our cruise speed. Okay, let's see what we got. So this is a quarter throttle. That's going to be on my idle circuit still. Quarter throttle. Starting to sputter just a little bit. I'm going to just roll into this and see if we can get our so our cruise speed is definitely acting up for sure. It's going to be our needle. So wide open. That sounds really good. Right now, as it sits, our idle jet is nice. It feels good by ear. Our cruise speed needs some attention, so that's going to be our needle. And then our main jet, that seems pretty good as well. So it's not stumbling, it's not bogging. So all of our focus right now is going to be on the needle. So that's quarter throttle. Quarter throttle. Turn this beast around. Quarter throttle. Oh. That's just off quarter throttle. Just off quarter throttle. We got a bog. Right there. I can feel it in my seat. Half throttle there. No backfiring. So if you noticed, whenever I let off the gas, when I'm not giving any gas, I'm on decel or downshifting, I'm not getting any backfiring. If I got backfiring, then you know that I would need to go larger on the pilot jet, because backfiring is a lean condition. A lot of people think that that's a rich condition, but it's not. Now, if I come to a stop and my idle is hanging, like I come to a stop, it's like, and then it slowly goes down, then you know that you need to go larger on your pilot jet. You need to richen up your pilot jet. Or sometimes you can adjust your air fuel screw to correct that. So that mid-range felt like a rich condition. So it wasn't a bog where it didn't just like die out, but it was more of a stumble. A bog would be more of a lean condition, not enough fuel. And a rich condition would be a stumble like you heard. So it's a little bit of a guessing game if you're not running something called a wideband O2 sensor, which makes life super, super easy. If you want to pull your spark plug out and you can check, like you can cruise on it at the RPM that it's acting up, and then you can pull your spark plug and look at the very tip of the spark plug, and if it's really black, it's very rich. If it's really white, it's lean. And if it's tan color, then it's stoic. It's perfect. Although with all the fuel additives, it makes it very difficult to do plug readings like that nowadays. Let me show you what I'm talking about on this wideband that makes your life way, way easier. There's no guessing involved. So this is the Rolling Wrench Wideband O2 sensor. Comes with all the cables. It comes with a wideband O2 sensor. This gets welded onto your exhaust. A lot of exhaust pipes already have a bung for the O2. What this does is it reads the gases coming out of the exhaust, sends the signal to this gauge. This gauge spits out a number, and that'll tell you exactly what your air-fuel mixture is. So I'm going to hook this guy up, and then we can tell exactly if we were rich or lean. There's no guessing involved, which, by the way, can be found on our website. I'll put the link down below, and you can purchase one of those. Let's talk about AFR ranges. AFR means air-fuel ratio. This is your operating range for running. So as your bike is running, this gauge is going to show a number. Stoic is chemically ideal. This is like if you have a car from the factory or a motorcycle or whatever, this is going to be set normally to 14.7. That's the way it's going to run perfect across the board. Now, if you were at more like 11.5, which is more fuel, you're going to run even better. Like that's for performance. Somebody rejet it for performance. Their number is anywhere from 11.5 to 13.3 for performance. Now, if you just want fuel economy, then you're going to be at like 16.5. Now, this number, as you ride, you're going to adjust your carburetor on all of the circuits that I talked to you about so that that number is right where you want it to be based on what your interest is. Performance, economy, or just chemically ideal. I have my wideband welded in the exhaust with a supplied bung. A lot of exhausts will already have this bung installed on it from the factory. And I'm just running the wires. This is totally just a temporary thing because I'm going to take this off when I'm done tuning. Got the gauge there, and then I've got the power ran up to the trickle charger. This takes all of the guesswork out of this. This is like totally worth the investment if you're doing any type of tuning on a regular basis. Otherwise you can do it by ear. So I'm going to adjust the air fuel screw. I'm backing it out right now. Just go a little at a time. The more I back it out, the leaner it gets. I pretty much have it backed out 4 turns. That's not going to work. So that tells me that we need to actually go down on the pilot jet. I'm going to bring it back in. As I bring it in, it gets rich. It's about as good as we're going to get with that pilot. And remember, the pilot circuit is purely for idle. I put it up on the bars here so we can see it easily. So there's our little after quarter. Totally rich. We're at 10 AFR. Okay, so we're on our needle right now. 12.5 up. 10. Now we're going to go into our main jet. Main jet was even at 10.5. See how a wideband can help you? Now we know we're super rich and all the way across the board. So we need to go a little bit less on the pilot, a little bit less on the needle, and a little bit less on the main. You only want to do these one at a time, but since I know what I'm doing, I'm going to do all of these at once and revisit. So I need to loosen the boot so that I can pop this carburetor off. Comes off pretty easy. Remember, this is full of gas, so the minute I tip it over, it's going to start pouring gas out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this drain right here, and I'm drain that onto a rag. Gas is going onto the rag. There we go. And that's how we drain the gas from the bowl so we can continue removing the bowl, because remember what I said is there's a O-ring on the float bowl gasket that could deform, and it's hard to get back in if you get gas on it. So we always want to drain the gas first. It's kind of cool. You can get straight to the main jet real easy. Since this is like a racing style carburetor, a lot of times when you go racing, you're always switching out those main jets because you're always wide open balls to the wall when you're racing. So the main jet is the main circuit you'd be changing. So it made it easier just to get to that. But I can't get to my pilot or any of that, so the whole bowl has to come off. Get this float bowl pulled off of here. Move that out of the way. Now we can get to our pilot jet and main jet. We're going to go a little bit smaller. This is kind of a trial and error. So we're going to go a little smaller on the pilot, a little smaller on the main jet. Then when we're done with that, we'll open up the needle and move the needle clip just a little bit. The pilot jet was a 38. This is a 35. A lot of times that's how they'll go in like 3-step increments. But we went smaller. This should be perfect, perfect, perfect. And we can adjust it out with the air screw. We'll do the same thing on the main jet and pull that sucker out of there. We had a 120 main jet in there. We're going to put a 115 in there. At sea level, that'd probably be perfect, but we're a mile above sea level in Denver, Colorado, so we need less fuel. So we can put the carburetor back on, because next we're just going to be dealing with the needle, which is out the top. We don't need to actually have the carburetor off. Let me get this thing cranked down. If we wanted to, we could try this at this point, but like I said, I do this all the time, so I kind of know what I'm doing. Generally speaking, you don't want to do two things at once. Only one thing at a time so you don't get confused. So we'll just open the top up here so we can get to that needle. Once we get to that needle, we're going to lean it out just a hair by removing the clip and moving it up one slot, which will bring the needle down. So pull that out. I don't think I showed you how to do this, so you're going to pull this up like this. Basically, you're pulling the spring back, and then you can pull your cable out. You notice there's that little lock down in there where it locks into place. So here's our needle. Here's our little diagram. Right now, our needle is sitting in the number 3 clip, and we want the needle to go down to kind of plug the main jet hole a little bit more. So we're going to set that clip in the number 2 mark. Okay, got it all set up, slide it down into place. This is a little bit of a trial and error, if we went too far or not. But the good thing is we have that wideband, and we can, that takes the guesswork out of what our actual tune is. I bet you were right on the money, guaranteed. So at an idle, we're doing pretty good at like 12 AFR. At a cruise, we're at like 13.7, 12.5. That is perfect. So I think you guys got the picture. Pilot, jet, adjust the idle. The air-fuel mixture screw, adjust the idle mixture. Once you get into the cruise speed, the quarter throttle, the 3/4 throttle, that's going to be your needle jet, and high RPM is the main jet. All 4 of those circuits are easily adjustable, and if you do it the wideband and you have a little time, then it makes life really, really easy. Now, let me show you how to tune a EFI system, a fuel injection system. It's much, much easier. No hands-on stuff, few buttons. Let me show you. To tune a fuel injection system, way, way easier than a carburetor. Rolling wrench, hand tuner. We've got this one. There's a lot of different companies on the market, but this is all you do. It's super, super easy. So, by the way, this is our 232. This one's a monster. Right now it's idling at 2200 RPM. So check this out. So all you do for a fuel injection, no getting your hands dirty or anything like that. This would kind of be like the pilot jet. So I'm adjusting this. All I do is push enter. Has been adjusted. I've richened it up. Fuel injection system is way, way easier than a carburetor. Throttle response on fuel injection is unreal. I just wanted to show you guys the difference. You're wondering why the engine sounds so clattery. I know I'm going to get a bunch of comments in that. That's a dry clutch. So that's that noise you're hearing. No motor problems. That's the way it's supposed to sound. Whew. That was an extremely long-winded video with a ton of info. If you learned something, make sure you comment down below what you learned and do a freaking spinning bicycle kick onto the subscribe button. If you liked the video, hit the thumbs up button. If you didn't like the video, hit the thumbs down button 2 times. I appreciate you guys, and we'll see you in the next video.